What's up, everybody? Renee Montgomery here. So with Remember the 3rd, we've been telling you guys to vote strong, vote informed, vote in 2020. Well, this workshop is to help you do exactly that. We want you to leave with more knowledge than what you came. And what we're going to be talking about is dispelling the myths between mail-in voting, absentee voting, what's going on with the post office. We're going to cover all that, and we're going to have some celebrity guests come through and ask a couple questions to our panel. Stay tuned. What's up, everybody? I'm Renee Montgomery, and this is a workshop for Remember the 3rd, where we want to inform you guys on your way to the polls. And there's been a lot of passion. There's been a lot of energy. We want to make sure that energy is educated and we lead you right to the polls. The people that are going to help me educate you, because I don't really know everything, obviously, as you guys know. So the people that are going to help me, they do know everything. We have Gwinnett County Representative Brenda Lopez Romero. We have Fulton County Commissioner Joe Carn, and we also have Fulton County State Representative Kim Schofield. Now, I'm going to start out with you, Joe. Tell me, what are my basic rights?
Well, thank you for having me. Hello, all. Hope everyone's well. Basically, you have every right to vote. Obviously, let's start with the big ones. Obviously, you have to be 18 or over to be able to vote. You have to be a citizen of these United States. But voting in general, obviously the first step, you cannot vote unless you are registered to vote, first of all. There are very few states that have same-day voter registration, very few. So generally, you must register to vote approximately 30 days before the date of election. In Georgia, the registration deadline is October 5th, for example. So 30 days before the election, you have to be registered to vote generally. Second big issue and big hurdle, most states require ID of some sort. In Georgia, generally that ID is an official ID. Now, official IDs include, but are not limited to, things like your driver's license, of course, a state ID, a United States passport, a military ID is acceptable. Generally throughout the states, a tribal ID, any federal government employment ID for a school or city or county along those lines, those types of IDs are also generally acceptable. So you don't want to go to the polls without ID, or you may end up having an issue. So you want to bring your ID with you.
Anyone else have anything on your basic rights?
Yeah, Renee and Commissioner, one of the things that I wanted us to know as well in terms of state IDs, for most states, a student ID is not a valid form of identification. So keep that in mind as well. Usually it has to be, as the Commissioner said, a state or federal government issued ID. So if it's from any other employer outside of the federal or state employer or your student ID, it is not a valid form. So make sure you keep that in mind, especially for young folks. Sometimes, they don't even drive. They don't have a car, so they might not have a driver's license. So it's very important that you have that ahead of time. The other thing that I wanted to note, for example, here in Georgia, one of our counties, Gwinnett County, the area where I both represent and that I live, is required to provide all ballots and all election-related information in Spanish, in addition to English, for those that are limited English proficient or simply feel more comfortable in Spanish. Now, these are far few in between the municipalities that can do not only Spanish language, but basically there's some federal laws that if certain municipalities have a certain percentage of language-specific voters, they're required, but these are very limited, so that just depends on where you live. But keep that in mind as well. Now, if for example, lots of the municipalities that do not have the requirement for the in-language information, then you can, in fact, bring someone to help you in the voting process. So if you're limited English proficient, that also includes for anyone that might simply be illiterate and can't read or write, you can also bring someone with you to help you vote. And they are required, they just fill out a little form with their name and what relationship they have to you, and they're allowed to come in and help you vote. So that's really important for people to know that that is something that they can do to help them feel more comfortable to go and vote regardless of whether they're English proficient or literate proficient.
Students, Gen Z, the young generation, if you have a student ID, that does not count as a legal form. Okay, so just be prepared. We don't want any problems. Love all of those nuggets. Right, so we're going to move on to someone who's actually became a friend of mine, and a lot of people know her as the former talk show host. Ricki Lake has a question.
Hi, it's me, Ricki Lake, and I want who is eligible for absentee voting?
Well, generally, anyone that's eligible to vote in person is eligible for absentee voting. So that applies to anyone over 18. Once again, you have to be a registered voter, but absentee voting does not require the ID presentation upon voting. So obviously, if there's an issue with ID, absentee may be a way to go. Now, there's absentee in person, early voting, which you have to bring an ID in as well. So there are two types of absentee, and one is by mail, one is early voting absentee in person.
Okay, so if you can get there early, you can get your early absentee voting. If you can't, there's a mail-in absentee voting.
Right.
Okay, is there anything else I need to know about it?
I will say about absentee voting, again, all of us here are Georgia specific, but Georgia, for example, is one of the places where you can vote by mail and you don't have a reason, or you don't need to have a reason to vote by mail. You can simply request your ballot, which are also called absentee ballots. Now, there are a few states that do require you to have some reason, for example, a handicap, an illness, and so that is just something to consider. But for most states, you don't need a reason to request an absentee ballot so that you can vote by mail. So that's really important for us to remember.
Yeah, so basically, if you don't want to tackle the polls and you don't want to cast your vote in person, you can still do it absentee ballot. You don't have to have a reason. Some states you might have to, but in Georgia, we're one of the states where you don't. Thank you. All right, so now we have another question from BET's very own, the next big thing, Tia P. Tia?
Hi, my name is Tia P, and I'm from Inglewood, California. And my question regarding the absentee/vote by mail ballots is, do they all get counted at the same time as the regular ballots? There's some skepticism, that I've heard and I've had that the absentee ballots either rarely get counted or get mishandled. And so it's just better to just physically go in and vote as opposed to risking the loss of that vote not being counted. So how real is that? How untrue is that? Or do you know?
Thank you, Tia. That was a great question. Absolutely, mail-in votes will be counted. In fact, 39 states, including DC, offer mail-in voting right now. And there are about 29 states that require mail-in ballots to arrive by Election Day, but 21 states merely require them to be postmarked by Election Day. So yes, it will be counted, but to find out which states you're eligible for mail-in voting, you have to go to But this actually began when states began passing absentee ballot laws during the Civil War, when both Union and Confederate soldiers were given the opportunity to cast their ballots from the battlefield and have them counted back home. The first laws were intended to accommodate voters who were away from home or seriously ill on Election Day. In the 1900s, Congress passed a law allowing soldiers in World War II to vote by mail. In the 1980s, California became the first state to allow eligible voters to request absentee ballots for any reason, including their own convenience. Today, in-person voting, returning your ballots to a secure drop-off or mail-in ballots, the count important for us to step up and use our power to our vote to impact change. People often ask me, Representative, if our votes will really make a difference. And I'll tell you, yes, it does. Because staying home right now impacts your ability to earn a livable wage. It determines where you can buy a house. Your mom, your dad's retirement, your grandmother's health benefits, schools in your district, and you may have kids one day. But right now, you may not see that change that you want to bring right now immediately. But your voice is your power. Your voice is so important that people are coming at every level to shut you down. But we're smarter than that. So don't let anybody stop you from your right to vote. Mail in your ballot.
Love that.
Adult now, adults vote. And you know what? As a representative, I truly trust your ability to change your city, your state, and even this nation. It's your time. So let's get this done. And, you know, I'll say this. My favorite line from the musical Hamilton is, "I'm not throwing away my
shots."
So it's on you.
Yeah.
This is your shot.
I love that. I love that. I am a huge Hamilton fan. So right when you said that, I said, oh, I'm going to know whatever she's about to say. I'm going to know it. Love it. I love the history of it all too. So people understand that these are things that are afforded to us. Like, use it. Use these luxuries. If you don't want to go to the polls, don't mail it in, but do it in a timely fashion so that it does get counted. Anyone else have anything else?
Renee, let me add, because part of the question, and we get this a lot when we were able before COVID to go and knock on doors and talk to people directly, a lot of voters, particularly here in Georgia after 2018 cycle, were very concerned with a lot of the unfortunate ill practices, you know, up to basically voter suppression. And so, you know, we keep hearing it, right? The only way that you're going to surpass that suppression is by casting your vote. And the more we get dissuaded from doing that, the more it matters some of these bad tactics that are done to try to prevent people from casting their vote or having their vote counted. But one of the main things that I want to be real specific about the question is that, for example, here in Georgia, most of the county parties, so by parties, I mean the actual Democratic county parties or the Republican county parties, are actually allowed to monitor the absentee ballots being counted at the election office. So usually in Gwinnett County, we're always asking for volunteers. And so we are literally there as volunteers from the morning when they start opening the ballots to the night when they they stop counting. So every single day that they're counting these ballots, there are volunteer monitors making sure that all of those ballots are being counted. So we should definitely trust in the system, but verify. Right. And one of the important things about the absentee vote or the absentee ballot is that you can actually check online when your vote is actually counted. That's a huge difference than when we go vote in person and you just kind of click the machine and, you know, and then you really are there fully trusting the system. But with the absentee ballot, you can actually follow up online on your voter registration website for the state called My Voter Page and see when your absentee ballot was counted.
I love that. So Tia, to answer your question, your absentee ballot, you can actually check when it is counted as opposed to when you cast it in person. And there's nothing wrong with casting it in person. But just to directly answer your question, yeah, it will be counted and you can check. Anyone else?
Okay. All right. So one last thing, Tia. Obviously, we've heard the quote, "The early bird catches the worm." Folks, we're living in very troubled and challenging times. Perhaps you've heard about the postal issues in attempts to suppress votes. Do not wait to send in that mail-in ballot. The earlier you get that ballot into the postal system, the faster it will be processed and counted, because the ultimate objective is to make sure your vote is counted. So we want to vote early with absentee. We do not want to wait until the last minute. The earlier, the better. Do not wait.
I know the commissioner said one last thing, but I have one more last thing. So I just want to remind folks about absentee ballots. And yes, definitely, if you can and you prefer to send it out with postal services, go ahead and do that. But remember that if you request an absentee ballot, you get it in the mail, you fill it out, you can actually physically go drop it off in what are called drop boxes. And they're usually situated in the early voting locations for your respective counties. or you can go to your county elections website, and it will have the list of where you can physically go drop it off. And when you go physically drop it off, those ballots are picked up on a daily basis, and they actually start counting them on a daily basis as they get them. And you don't have to put postage, so you don't have to worry about, getting a stamp and sticking it on there. So it's really important to remember that we can physically drop off our absentee ballots.
Okay, so you have a lot of options. What we're trying to present to you is a lot of different ways for you to cast your vote. There's mail-in, you can request an absentee ballot, and then you can actually drop it off in person if you aren't comfortable with mailing it in. So if you already know what you want to do with your vote, what are you waiting for? That's the question. Like, just go ahead and get it done. I have another question from Johnathan Coachman, and you might know him from WWE, XFL, Madden. I don't know. You might know him from a lot of different places, but Johnathan has a question. Johnathan?
Hey guys, the coach here. I got a quick question. Is there any place that you know of that I can get reliable information on early voting? I just don't know a lot about it.
Well, Johnathan, thank you for the question. So I would tell you, first and foremost, there's two places that I would direct you to. Go to the Secretary of State's information. So if you literally Google my voter page, you are going to come up with the information to go directly to the Secretary of State's website. They have all of your basic information about statewide election dates, when deadlines are, requests to make your request to receive your absentee ballot, when early voting locations are going to open up, their times. But to be real specific about your own county, same thing, just go to your county's election website, and then they will specify information about what the hours are going to be, because different counties have different election hours for early voting. And they also have, the questions that we had before about the drop boxes, right? So they will have the list of where you can go do go to your drop box for early voting absentee ballots. So those are the two main places that I would say that are directly linked to both your state and your county.
It is important. Thanks, Brenda. That's some great information, because it also is important for us to check our voting location and polling locations. Things are changing rapidly. So you want to make sure that you're currently and have the accurate, most up-to-date information. So it's important that people go online, check their location, check the hours of operation, check for the drop boxes, check, for everything. We've got to do due diligence and following up. And this is our chance to be accountable to making sure that we are prepared to go vote. You need a voting plan. You need to make sure that you're voting all the way down the ticket. Don't stop at the top, start at the top and stop in the middle. We got to go all the way from the top to the bottom, bottom to the top. We got to make sure that we are equipped, and we know that there's no chance of us being undergirded or tricked or duped to say that we get there and the poll had changed, the location has changed or closed. Let's do our work on the front end.
Representative Schofield, you reminded me of one thing to add on. On my voter page, when you look it up, you just Google it. Like I said, my voter page will bring it up for the Georgia Secretary of State information. You put in your basic information there to pull up your registration information. That will tell you where your polling locations are. And in addition to that, you can actually get a sample ballot for most of the counties now should have them available. So you can actually print out what the ballot for your respective precincts are. So it'll be specific to your county and to your voting locations. And that way you can do some research ahead of time also to figure out who you're going to vote for. Because as Representative Schofield said, yes, absolutely. We kind of obviously know it's a presidential election, so that's going to be top ticket. And then we're going to have our vice president and so on, a lot of the major elections. But we also have a lot of local, a lot of the state house, the state senate, commissioners that are running, district attorneys that are running. But we also have a couple of constitutional amendment questions on the ballot. And sometimes we go there and we're like, what is this? And what do these questions say, right? And so definitely go to my voter page, here in Georgia, if you're here in Georgia, and you can download your sample ballot specific to where you're going to vote.
There's one other thing I wanted to touch on, and we want to warn, especially our younger people, about this. Obviously, voting is one of the quickest ways to improve your surroundings. With that in mind, I'll play devil's advocate here. There's a negative side to this. There are some folks who don't want you to go and vote, and they may try to find subtle ways to stop you from voting. And I say this because stopping you from voting may be worth a lot of money and power to someone else. I'm going to say that again. Stopping you from voting is worth a lot of money and power to someone else. So they may try to stop or intimidate you from voting. Now, how can they intimidate you from voting? There are ways to intimidate you that technically are illegal, but there's a gray line. For instance, let's say you drive to your polling place and you pull into the driveway and you can be intimidated. Let's say seems to be a heavy police presence. You pull up to your precinct and you see police blue lights flashing in the parking lots, for instance. That may be enough to scare someone off. They may have tickets that are overdue, or they may have a restraining order, or they may have a pending court situation, and those blue lights may be enough just to scare you off. Well, I can tell you something. Some of the powers that be, they're counting on you to be scared. They're counting on you to turn around and run away. Don't run away. Do not be afraid. You have your right to vote, and there are some people that want to limit that right, that want to stop you from voting and intimidate you from voting. My grandmother years ago, they used to attempt to go and vote in Columbus, Georgia, at the local post office. When they would walk to the post office, the sheriff would be sitting on the front porch of the post office in a rocking chair with a shotgun in his lap. These same tactics happen today. I can fast forward a few years back in College Park when they attempted to make a voting precinct out of a police station. There's some people that would not go to that precinct to vote because it was a police precinct. There were protections in place with the Voting Rights Act that stopped that type of voter intimidation. I say that because today, those protections are no longer in place. So there's some local officials that may try to stop you in these very, very devious ways. Do not let them stop you.
So I love that. So I'm going to take a little bit from what everyone said. So local, that was important. Don't just stop halfway through, as Representative Schofield said. Go all the way. Know it beforehand. Know it beforehand, because I've been in that same position where I know exactly who I was voting for president. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. And then, like I said, it gets a little fuzzy halfway down. Then you go a little bit further and I don't even know what's going on. And to Representative Representative Lopez Romero, to your point, you got to know there's other questions on there that might seem a little bit interesting. You need to answer those questions. You need to not be afraid. We need representation. That's why the census matters. That's why voting matters, because representation matters. So to the commissioner's point, to everyone's point, we can't let any tactics of the not knowing, the being afraid because there's cop lights outside, we can't let any of those tactics work again, because they have worked before, they have worked in the past, and we have to move past that. Okay, so we asked you guys to submit some questions and we got some interesting ones back. Emma from Carson City, Nevada asked, what if I'm in the hospital?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In the midst of COVID-19, you don't know what outcomes you can expect. There are just many people that find themselves in the hospital, especially long-term now. And so that's one of the advantages of mail-in voting, that you can vote by mail if you find yourself in the hospital or unable to get to the polls. Just request your absentee ballot early and then make sure that you're mailing and filling them out and having someone drop it in the mail for you. Great question.
I love that. Thank you, Emma. All right, so then we have a question from Roger from Peoria, Illinois. And sorry if I said that incorrectly. They've been helping me in the back. But his question was, can a citizen who has never lived in the country register to vote and request an absentee ballot?
Well, if you're a citizen, the short answer is yes to both of those questions.
I guess only, but it's all part of the same, because it's just sort of like you can, yes, you still have to register to vote. You still have to do the whole
Exactly.
But because it's overseas mailing, you just have to have more time, right?
You request an overseas ballot. Yes.
So take into account that if you're requesting an overseas ballot, it might take a little more time than the ballots from here in America. So again, all we keep stressing is plan ahead, vote early. Oh, okay. So, well, if you're a citizen, the short answer is yes, you can request it, even if you don't live here. It's the same concept we've been talking about. Whether you can be there in person at the time of the election or not, there's different things that you can do involving absentee ballot, mail-in voting, research. But I like that you guys are asking the questions. Thank you, Roger, for the question.
All right, so it's time to move the masses.
All right, so I love it. I love all the information. I love all the questions. Thank you to Ricki Lake. Thank you to Tia P. Thank you to Johnathan Coachman. And thank you to our esteemed panel. I mean, honestly, I hosted this and I learned a lot from this panel. So thank you guys. Can all of you all leave me with one last little nugget, starting with the commissioner?
Thank you so much for having me. Folks, voting is the number one way to get into mainstream America. If you truly want to be part of this society from the ground up, you have to be a registered voter. You get more respect from your community if you're a registered voter. You get more respect from the police if you're a registered voter. You get more respect from your local elected officials as well. And contrary to popular belief, if you've never voted before, you actually vote every day. Vote every day. You go into that grocery store and you will go down that aisle. You are voting because, and those candidates are campaigning for your dollars. You're voting for whatever your favorite cereal is. They campaign with their colors. They campaign with their slogans. You vote every day. When you go shop for shoes or clothes, you're voting. And those candidates are vying for your vote. So we vote every day in one shape, form, or another. So this is nothing alien to you. You're actually doing it every day. This is doing it on the utmost scale, and this is doing it on the citizens scale that will reap the most benefit for you. So it's so important, and we cannot stress it enough. It's time to step into adulthood. It's time to step into the mainstream of American business, and that's undergirded through voting and being an active citizen.
Love that. Representative Brenda Lopez Romero.
Well, it's great to see everybody. I want to highlight the fact that for me, it's been quite an honor and a privilege to have been elected as the first Latina to our Georgia General Assembly in 2016. Far too long of a wait, but that's why it's important for us to cast our vote, because it matters for us to have representative government, but it also matters for us to have elected officials that actually have lived our issues, our obstacles, and also our successes. So I implore you to go out and vote. And I found the most simplest way, because I do talk to a lot of middle school and high schoolers and how to explain to them how, why it's important to get involved. And I've come up with something that I thought was real simple for them to understand that I think works even with us that are a little bit older. And so I always go into a room and I'll have here people, participate. And I always ask this real simple question. Raise your hand if you like to be told what to do. No one ever raises their hand. So you can imagine, right? These high schoolers, middle schoolers, nobody raises their hand when I ask them to raise their hand. If you don't like to be told what to do, then you need to vote, because someone is making decisions for you. And the commissioner highlighted most importantly about how we spend your tax dollars, but also just the laws and regulations that we live by on a day-to-day basis. And if you're not voting, you're allowing someone else to make those decisions for you without your input. So thanks again for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you vote early, October 12th to the 30th, or the last day to vote, November 3rd.
I love that. And congratulations on being the first Latina to Lucha as Mi Lucha, Representative Kim Schofield.
You know, I really appreciate what my colleague, Representative Brenda Lopez Romero has said, because first of all, I do not like to be told what, so I too. But the most important thing is to make sure that you're holding people accountable. You know, when you put people in office, there's an accountability factor that we expect them to do the right thing for the right reasons at the right time. And we can see right now in the moment of history that we fail to be accountable and be good stewards and responsible for the people that we've elected. And so we're not going to make that mistake again. But in that accountability moment is also the moment where we get to hold you accountable. So I am holding you accountable to go out and vote. That's what your responsibility is. It is for you to go put your vote. You pick things all the time. We vote on things every day, like the commissioner has said. But right now, it's my time and our time collectively to hold you accountable. The next group of leaders are going to come for people on this platform that are expressing, the people that are listening, watching. They're going to come from you. So I want you now to exercise that right. There are a couple of important things in life and dates that you have to remember. Your birthday. There's the day that you graduate. There are the day you get your first job or the first car. There's days and dates that you'll always remember. I want you to get in the habit of knowing that November 3rd, election days, every time the poll is open, I am holding you accountable to go there and cast your vote, not just for presidents, every time the poll is open. So listen, I'm looking at you and I'm expecting you to get it done. No more excuses, that it is time for you to step into this role as a responsible voting American citizen, or whatever citizenship you find yourself in. You are a registered voter, and we expect you, no. Personally, I expect you to go out and vote. I'm holding you accountable.
I love that. And you know, you made my mind think of something. You said every time the polls are open, and I have a friend named Seth Cohen who we talk about it quite often, that local is going to be the new global. People aren't traveling like they used to. Your local community, what's happening locally with you, that's going to be your everything for a while. Because as we know, we're in a certain climate and you can't travel like you used to. Things aren't like they used to be before. So Coachella used to be Coachella, right? Well, the state fair might be your new Coachella, because large crowds and all that might not be the thing, but you have to have a say in your community. But as Representative Brenda Lopez Romero said, you don't want people telling you what to do. I don't want people telling me what to do. But when it comes to things and it involves politics, everybody's like, oh, hands off. Like, nah, I don't want to do it. Nah, I'm not going to get into it. What's it going to change? You know, we've heard all the things, but at a certain point, we have to try to see, you know, we've already assumed not voting is not going to change anything. So you've already tried not voting, basically. Let's try something different now. Let's just try something different, see what happens. And let's try it again. This same thing, we're going to have another workshop on November 2nd. It's obviously November 3rd is the election. So it's the day before the election. We're going to have a workshop. It's basically going to be a little pep rally. We're going to have a little fun, get people excited. But the main thing is educate yourself, vote early, and let's remember the 3rd of November. All right, listen, I cannot thank our celebrity guests for their questions, and I can't thank our panel. Thank you. I can't thank you guys enough for keeping us informed. That's what this workshop, that's what I told you guys you were going to do. You were going to leave with a little bit more knowledge than when you came, and I know that they did exactly that. So you guys, in 2020, vote informed. In 2020, vote strong. And you guys have your voices heard. Remember the 3rd.